There is a place on this planet where the rules of nature seem to break, where blood pours from glaciers, lakes burn under ice, and the sky splits into colors that have no name. A continent so extreme, so locked away, that most governments would rather you stayed curious from a distance than actually knew the truth. Antarctica is not just the coldest place on Earth. It is the most protected secret in modern science. And today, we are pulling back every layer. Before we go any further, if you have never subscribed to this channel, do it right now. Because what you are about to hear is the kind of information that disappears from search results faster than it appears. Hit that subscribe button and the bell. You will not want to miss what comes next. In 1946, the United States military launched Operation High Jump. Admiral Richard Byrd led a fleet of 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft to Antarctica. The stated mission was scientific research. The real result was a catastrophic retreat after just 8 weeks, when the original plan called for 6 to 8 months. Byrd himself gave a press interview in Santiago, Chile, where he described encountering aircraft that could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. He called them a serious threat. That interview ran in a Chilean newspaper called El Mercurio on March 5, 1947. It was almost completely ignored by American press. The question no one answered was, what exactly sent 4,700 military personnel running home? Antarctica holds 70% of the world's fresh water, every drop of it. If the ice sheet melted completely, global sea levels would rise by approximately 200 feet. That is not a projection. That is the measured volume of frozen water sitting on a landmass the size of the United States and Mexico combined. The West Antarctic ice sheet alone contains enough water to raise oceans by 16 feet. Scientists at the Alfred Wegener Institute in Bremerhaven, Germany, published data in 2023 showing that the Thwaites Glacier, nicknamed the Doomsday Glacier, is melting from below at a rate that suggests structural collapse within decades. The glacier is roughly the size of Florida. Lake Vostok is a body of water the size of Lake Ontario that sits buried under 2.5 miles of solid ice. Russian scientists began drilling toward it in 1972 and did not break through until February 5, 2012. When they finally made contact with the water, something happened that they were not fully prepared for. The pressurized lake water shot up the borehole and immediately refroze. The samples they eventually retrieved contained bacterial DNA that matched no known organism in any scientific database on Earth. The Russian Antarctic expedition team led by Sergei Bulat at the Petersburg Nuclear Physics Institute confirmed this. The organism was given the provisional name Organism 111. It has never been publicly reclassified or identified. The McMurdo dry valleys are considered the closest environment on Earth to the surface of Mars. No rain has fallen in this region for approximately 2 million years. The valleys are so dry that mummified seals have been found there, miles from the coast, perfectly preserved for an estimated 1,000 years, with no explanation for how they got there. The National Science Foundation's United States Antarctic program documented these finds in the Taylor Valley region. The seals were not dragged there by predators. There are no predators capable of doing that in this environment. Scientists still have no confirmed answer. Blood Falls is exactly what it sounds like. A waterfall that pours dark red water out of the Taylor Glacier in the McMurdo Dry Valleys. It was first discovered by Australian geologist Thomas Griffith Taylor in 1911, and for decades, scientists thought it was caused by red algae. In 2017, a team from the University of Alaska Fairbanks used radio echo sounding to trace the source. The water comes from a saltwater lake trapped beneath the glacier for an estimated 1.5 million years. The red color comes from iron-rich brine oxidizing on contact with air, essentially rusting. The water temperature inside the subglacial lake is -5 degrees Celsius, and it stays liquid because of its extreme salt concentration. Life lives inside that water. Microbial life that has been completely sealed off from sunlight and outside atmosphere since before modern humans existed. If you are still watching, you already know this video is different. Everything being said here is verifiable. Every name, date, and location is real. If this kind of raw, documented information is what you want, subscribe right now and share this video with someone who thinks they know everything about this planet. In 1959, 12 nations signed the Antarctic Treaty in Washington, D.C. on December 1st. The treaty established Antarctica as a scientific preserve and banned military activity, nuclear testing, and territorial claims. Today, 56 nations have signed it. What the treaty also does, buried in Article 7, is give designated observers the right to inspect any facility on the continent at any time with no notice. The inspection has happened only a handful of times in 65 years. The continent is policed almost entirely by the honor system of sovereign nations, several of which have built military-grade infrastructure under the banner of scientific research. The geomagnetic South Pole and the geographic South Pole are not the same place. The geographic South Pole is the fixed axis point at 90 degrees south latitude, where the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station sits. The geomagnetic South Pole is the point where the Earth's magnetic field is oriented vertically downward, and it moves. In 2023, the geomagnetic South Pole was located near Adelie Land on the coast of Antarctica, but has been drifting northward at an increasing rate. This magnetic drift affects GPS systems, aviation navigation, and compass accuracy across the entire southern hemisphere. The cause of the acceleration is still under active scientific debate. Antarctica has volcanoes. Mount Erebus on Ross Island is the southernmost active volcano on Earth, and has been continuously erupting since at least 1972. It hosts a persistent lava lake inside its summit crater, which is one of only a handful of long-lived lava lakes on the planet. Scientists from the New Mexico Tech Volcanology Group have been monitoring Erebus for decades, and in 2022, they detected unusual seismic signatures they described as unlike anything previously recorded at that site. The volcano sits just about 22 miles from McMurdo Station, the largest Antarctic research base operated by the United States. Beneath the West Antarctic ice sheet, there is a river system, a real flowing river, underground, underneath miles of ice. Scientists from Durham University in the United Kingdom published findings in 2022 in the journal Nature Geoscience, confirming that a subglacial river network stretches for over 1,000 kilometers beneath the ice. The water comes from geothermal heat melting the bottom of the ice sheet, and it lubricates the base, essentially acting like a layer of grease that allows glaciers to slide faster toward the ocean. This means the ice is moving faster than surface measurements alone would suggest, and models that did not account for this have been underpredicting melt rates for years. In 1997, something recorded in the underwater hydrophone arrays of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration shook the scientific community. The sound was enormous. It was picked up by sensors more than 5,000 kilometers apart. It was called the bloop. NOAA researchers initially struggled to identify it. The sound's profile matched a living creature, but it was louder than any known animal sound ever recorded. In 2012, NOAA officially reclassified the bloop as icequake activity, meaning the sound of ice fracturing at a massive scale. But in 1997, for 15 years, no one had an answer. The original coordinates of the sound place its epicenter in the South Pacific Ocean, near 50 degrees south latitude, not far from the Antarctic shelf. Antarctica was once a jungle. This is not speculation. Fossilized forests have been found on the continent. In 2017, researchers from the Alfred Wegener Institute uncovered fossil root systems of ancient trees in the Transantarctic Mountains at a location roughly 480 kilometers from the South Pole. The fossils dated to approximately 280 million years ago, during the Permian period, when the continent sat in a position closer to the equator. The trees grew in near total darkness for months at a time, much like trees in the far north today, suggesting they had adapted to extreme seasonal light cycles. This means life found a way in conditions we assumed were borderline impossible. The ozone hole over Antarctica was not discovered by satellite imaging first. It was discovered by a ground-based spectrophotometer operated by Joe Farman, Brian Gardner, and Jonathan Shanklin of the British Antarctic Survey at Halley Research Station. Their findings were published in the journal Nature on May 16, 1985. When they submitted the data, NASA initially dismissed it because their own satellite data showed no such hole. The reason, which was discovered later, was that NASA's satellite software had been programmed to flag readings that low as errors and automatically filter them out. The hole was real. The software had been hiding it for years. There are approximately 4,000 lakes beneath Antarctica's ice sheet. 4,000. They range in size from small ponds to massive bodies of water like Lake Vostok. Lake Ellsworth in West Antarctica was targeted by a UK drilling project in December of 2012. The project failed when the hot water drill system malfunctioned after months of preparation and millions of dollars in funding. The team had to pack up and return home without reaching the water. A second attempt has been in planning stages since then. Scientists believe the lakes may contain ecosystems that have been isolated for anywhere between 15 million and 34 million years. In 1973, a Soviet Il-14 transport aircraft disappeared over Antarctica during a routine resupply flight. The aircraft, operating out of Mirny Station, vanished without a distress call. The wreckage was found years later, but the official investigation was classified by Soviet authorities and has never been fully released. In the same decade, the United States lost contact with two separate aircraft near the continent, both under circumstances that were logged as unexplained navigation failures. Antarctica's interior creates unique electromagnetic anomalies that can disrupt compass readings and aircraft instruments in ways that still have not been completely explained. In 2018, a team of researchers at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand published a paper confirming the discovery of 91 previously unknown volcanoes beneath the West Antarctic ice sheet. 91. They were detected using ice-penetrating radar. The tallest of these subglacial volcanoes reaches over 3,900 meters high. If even a fraction of these structures become more active due to geothermal changes triggered by ice loss above them, the resulting meltwater would accelerate ice flow toward the ocean in ways that no current sea level projection model fully accounts for. The wind at Commonwealth Bay on the coast of Antarctica regularly reaches 240 kilometers per hour. Douglas Mawson, the Australian geologist and explorer, set up his base there in 1912 without knowing it was among the windiest places on the entire surface of the Earth. He discovered this the hard way. His expedition documented winds so severe that men were tied to ropes to move between buildings only a few meters apart. One member of the expedition, Xavier Mertz, died during a return journey from a depot in January of 1913. The suspected cause was hypervitaminosis A, meaning toxic levels of vitamin A from eating the livers of sled dogs, which contained massive concentrations of it. It was one of the first documented cases of this kind of poisoning in polar exploration history. Temperatures at the Russian Vostok station, located at the southern pole of inaccessibility, reached negative 89.2 degrees Celsius on July 21st, 1983. That remains the lowest naturally occurring air temperature ever recorded on the surface of the Earth. At that temperature, exposed skin freezes in under 60 seconds. Rubber shatters like glass. Even the steel in the station equipment becomes brittle enough to crack. The researchers stationed there in those conditions were cut off from evacuation for months at a time due to the complete impossibility of aircraft operations in such temperatures. Antarctica has a population of 0 permanent human residents. Everyone there is temporary. The continent has no government, no indigenous people, no cities. But it does have a marathon. The Antarctic Ice Marathon is run every year near Union Glacier, about 80 kilometers from the Heritage Range. Participants run at approximately 630 meters above sea level in temperatures that average around negative 20 degrees Celsius. The course record as of recent years is 3 hours and 44 minutes. People pay tens of thousands of dollars to enter. The waiting list is years long. There's a graveyard at McMurdo Station. A small number of historic graves from the heroic age of exploration remain preserved on the continent, including a cross erected in memory of 3 men from Robert Falcon Scott's expedition who died at Cape Evans in 1912. Scott himself reached the South Pole on January 17, 1912, only to find that Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen had beaten him there by 34 days. Scott's entire returning party died on the ice. His last diary entry was found with his body and reads, in part, "We shall stick it out to the end, but we are getting weaker, of course, and the end cannot be far." It was written on or around March 29, 1912, 868 nautical miles from the safety of their base. In 2018, scientists confirmed the detection of a massive structure buried under the East Antarctic ice sheet in the Wilkes Land region. The anomaly, known as the Wilkes Land Gravity Anomaly, spans approximately 2,400 kilometers and was initially identified by satellite gravity measurements. 2 competing theories have been put forward. One is that it is the remnant impact crater from a meteorite that struck approximately 250 million years ago, potentially triggering the Permian-Triassic extinction event that killed approximately 96% of marine species on Earth. The other theory is that it is a massive concentration of dense rock from ancient geological activity. The crater theory, if confirmed, would make it the largest impact structure ever identified on the planet. The South Pole receives 6 months of continuous daylight and 6 months of complete darkness every single year. During the dark winter months, no aircraft can land at the Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station. If someone becomes critically ill or injured between mid-February and late October, they cannot be evacuated. In 1999, Dr. Jerry Nielsen, a physician working at the station, discovered a lump in her breast in March and was unable to leave. She diagnosed herself, began her own chemotherapy using supplies airdropped to the station in July, and was finally evacuated on October 16, 1999. She survived. Her account was published in the book Icebound in 2001. Somewhere beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet, in a region that receives almost no scientific attention because it is simply too remote, geological surveys have detected what appears to be an ancient river delta buried under kilometers of ice. The structure, mapped using airborne radar surveys conducted in part by the British Antarctic Survey, suggests that before the glaciation of the continent approximately 34 million years ago, Antarctica was covered by river systems, and possibly vegetation far more complex than the fossilized forests already found. The continent we think of as a frozen wasteland was, for most of its geological history, green, possibly lush. In 2021, satellite images released by the European Space Agency showed that a section of ice shelf the size of Rome broke away from the Brunt Ice Shelf in Antarctica near Halley Research Station. The station had been relocated by the British Antarctic Survey in 2017 in anticipation of exactly this kind of calving event. The ice that broke off was roughly 1,270 square kilometers. It floated away into the Weddell Sea and began its slow dissolution into the ocean. Nobody moved it. Nobody stopped it. It simply left, like the continent was shedding skin. In 2020, a group of researchers from the University of Innsbruck published analysis showing that the collapse of the Conger ice shelf, an area of about 1,200 square kilometers, had been preceded for years by a pattern of surface melt that their models had flagged but that had not triggered any official response. On March 15, 2022, the Conger ice shelf collapsed entirely over the course of 3 days. Simultaneously, temperatures in the interior of East Antarctica were recorded at 40 degrees Celsius above the seasonal average. 40 degrees. Meteorologists called it statistically impossible. The kind of event you might expect once in every 10,000 years of climate history. The last of Antarctica's secrets may not be geological. In 2004, a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences confirmed that Antarctic krill, the tiny shrimp-like creatures that form the foundation of the entire Southern Ocean food chain, have been declining sharply since the 1970s, with population estimates showing drops of up to 80% in some areas of the southwest Atlantic sector. Krill feed on the algae that grow under sea ice. Less sea ice means less algae. Less algae means less krill. Less krill means every creature above it on the food chain, from penguins to blue whales to seals, collapses in sequence. The entire Southern Ocean ecosystem balances on organisms that are each about 2 centimeters long. Antarctica does not belong to any country. It does not officially belong to science either, despite what the treaty says. It belongs to the ice, and the ice has already begun to decide how much longer it plans to stay. The last verified count of subglacial lakes in Antarctica reached 279 in a 2013 paper by Wright and Siegert. Not 4,000 as earlier estimates suggested, but still an extraordinary number, each one a sealed world that has never been touched by sunlight, never been visited, never been named, sitting in complete silence under ice that in some places reaches 4 kilometers thick. Whatever is living inside them has been living there, alone, longer than our entire species has existed.